Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week, we're going to be talking about order taking and false gods. So I touched on this thought of order taking a little bit last week, but I wanted to spend some more time this week talking on it because it's something that I've noticed in my own life, not only in my career professionally, but also personally in my own life, especially right now. So let me explain to you what I mean by that when I say order taking. So I've been a consultant for a long time, 10 years or more probably now. And this used to come up all the time when we were on different projects working in IT. So there's kind of two ways you can come into a project. Sometimes we would come in as a team where we would come in to do a specific job, like an analysis of something, or we were coming in to do some sort of specific, activity of some sort, depending on whatever the project was. And then there's sometimes where you might get placed as, because with a company, you might get placed in it's called staff augmentation. It happens a lot in IT when a specific company, maybe they're looking for a skill set that they don't have. They don't want to hire somebody, so they get a contractor to come in. And in a staff augmentation, you're kind of on your own. You're not an employee, so you're not getting the same benefits. Sometimes you're not even getting the same days off as the employees, but you're there to do a job which isn't necessarily project related. So we had this conversation a lot when we would come in as a group, right? Because it's really easy to fall into that more staff augmentation role where you're just going through doing something and it almost feels like you're an employee even though you're not. And so, a staff augmentation role, often the person, because they're on their own, they're more reluctant to speak up about things. They want to, they don't want to lose the contract or they don't want to get let go. So maybe they let things go. I mean, obviously this doesn't happen all the time, but this is just something that I noticed in my experience. And so a staff augmentation person acts like a employee, but a little more guarded or a little more, not as apt to speak up as maybe even an employee would. But on the project side, when you come in to do a project or if you have a specific team in there to do something, I mean, that's why you're being hired, right? You're coming into a role to be paid for your opinion. So they expect answers, right? And those answers can come in the form of many ways, documentation or presentations or whatever it is. And so there's always this fine line when you're on a project of how far do you really go, right? Like how far do you really say what actually is going on, right? Because a lot of times there's so many political things going on within an organization. There's maybe some groups don't get along with the other, so you're playing liaison in between those groups, or they could have some real serious issues happening, and you're the one coming in to give that information, right? So there's a lot of it's a very delicate topic, a very delicate position, I guess, not topic, but position to be in. And it can get really awkward. It can be really frustrating. It can be really confusing. But at the end of the day, you're there for a job. They are paying you for your opinion. And so you may give your opinion and they may not like the opinion, right? They may not agree with you, or they may not want to hear that, or they may, have expected a different outcome or whatever it is. And so then you're kind of stuck in this place where it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here, right? You paid me to come in to do this job, and now I've done the job and I'm giving you the actual truth of the matter, right? Because I'm an independent party, right? I'm not in the day to day. I don't have the same, when you're not part of an organization, you're not as invested into a lot of things as actual employees are. So when you're giving your non-biased opinion, because you're coming in there again just to provide a service, and usually you leave after that. And when you're telling someone, a CEO or a CIO or somebody what's actually going on in their organization and they don't like it, it becomes this awkward place, because it's like, well, but this is what's happening, and we have this conversation a lot about, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to come in here and be an order taker, just do what you told me to do? Or do you want me to actually come in and consult, right? Be a true consultant, right? And consult on the matter, whatever that is. And so I touched on this a little bit last week, like I said, about how I've noticed this with myself. I've noticed this just as I'm watching people, as I'm talking to people, that we've gotten to this point where we're order takers in our own life, right? We're order takers in our current reality. And generally we're getting our orders these days from the government. We're waiting for them to tell us what to do. We're waiting on the TV, whatever's on the TV for us, right? We're waiting for Hollywood to tell us, right? Or some other guru, right? You name it. We're waiting on them to tell us, right? What to do. And so we've become this order taker, and we're doing these things even if it doesn't feel good to us, right? Like we're coming in and we're doing something, whatever that is. Like, let's use the masks, for example. I've talked to so many people who don't want to wear the mask. They hate it. They don't like it, but they're only doing it because, someone told them to, because they just want to not be bothered. They don't want to have the conflict. They don't want to have, some experience that everybody's worn out from it, right? But when we keep perpetuating this, it's never going to change, right? When people continue to participate in it, it's never going to change. And so it's like like I said, with taking the order from, when on project work, when we're just taking orders versus truly consulting, I feel like that's what's happening right now, right? We're taking these orders instead of truly consulting with ourselves, to go within and ask ourselves, wait a minute, does that work for me? If it doesn't, why am I doing it, right? Like, why am I going against my own truth and doing something that I don't agree with? And, when we seek out these answers from other people, or we're waiting for us to tell them the truth, we're not in alignment with ourselves. We're doing these things outside of what is good, what feels good for us, or what's within our, what's within ourself for our own personal truth. And I've even noticed for quite some time with this order taking that's happening, there's a lot of bullying that's going on with that too, right? Like, we're being bullied into these things. I mean, how long have we spent campaigns and campaigns against bullying, but all of a sudden it's cool to bully people, right? If they don't agree with you, you can bully them and shame them and dox them and do whatever you want to do to take somebody down simply because they don't agree with you. And that's bullshit. That is 100% straight up bullshit, right? But we're taking the orders, and we're not consulting with ourselves to figure out what it is that works for us, and saying, no, wait a minute, you know what? This doesn't work for me. It stops here, right? It stops here. And when it doesn't stop and we keep doing it, that's why the shit perpetuates continuously. And that's why we're still where we are. What is this? 9 months later now, right? We were promised 2 weeks of this bullshit, and here we are 9 months later. So when we're doing this, when we're taking these orders and we're not consulting with ourselves and figuring out what's right for us, we're giving away our power. And within that, we're also creating these false gods, right? We're creating these false gods outside of ourselves that have the answers, no more than we do, that are the authority over us, and that essentially control everything that we're doing. I mean, think about the whole concept of God anyway, right? To me, it's meant so many different things over the years. I mean, I grew up in a Catholic household, so I used to believe that God was this person in the sky with this long beard and, judging me and waiting to punish me if I was bad. But if I was good, maybe sometimes I would get some good things. And that really fucks up a human psyche over the years, right? When that's instilled into you when you're young. And so over the years, as I've moved far away from that, and that no longer resonates with me, and not that it ever really did, but I've settled on the definition of God as more of this, the energy of the universe, right? Like this oneness with the universe. Like everything is energy, and we're all a part of it. But if you think back, or if you think about the way we worship, let's call them personal gods, right? Maybe these personal gods we don't even realize that we're worshiping, but things like money and power and even religious groups, right? Anything like that, fashion, physical appearance, our employment, anything with our relationships, right? Anything that's we think we need to have, and it has to be this way in order for us to be happy and successful and, makes us feel good. Like we have to have this thing. Any of that kind of stuff, I think, can be thought of as a false god. And this false God agenda is programmed everywhere, right? It's everywhere. You're told what to think and what to do everywhere, right? This is, TV, internet, magazines, anything that you have that you can consume, there's some element of that, I think, in there. And we just consume it, right? We consume it day after day after day. And we've come to this point where it doesn't even seem out of the ordinary for us, right? We just expect it. We just think it's part of living, right? It's just part of the human experience. But does it really have to be? I mean, do we really have to consume these things and strive for these things that we're told, right? That we're told, and then we take the order from and just do, right? I think, and even think about this. Think about reality TV shows. I'm always baffled by people that talk to me about these reality TV shows, and they're like, do you watch so-and-so show? And I'm like, no, I don't know. I hate reality TV. I don't watch any of it. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, so-and-so did this, and so, and they know these people's whole life stories. They know everything about this person's situation or breakup or cheating or all this stuff, and they're so impacted by this. It's like really gets them going, right? But then if you would ask them something about their own personal beliefs, like what do they want or how do they feel? Or even something like about their finances, like, I don't know, like what are your goals or something like that? Most people can't answer those questions because they spent so much time and energy in these worlds of these false gods, I'll call them, and consuming that and being like entranced by that, right? That's their world. And it's amazing to me when I see that. Like, I don't understand it. Like, why do you want to spend so much time and energy on that instead of spending that time and energy on yourself, right? It goes back to what I said about consulting with ourselves. And think back, even I watch the show Ancient Aliens a lot. I love it. It's one of those neutral shows you can have on that, it's interesting, but also I can tune out and it can be fine. And they talk a lot about there on the various types of gods, right? Like when they talk about, past, ancient times and they show all this stuff, they're talking about all these various types of gods. And, those gods, and even today, right, are represented by invisible beings, right? Or these invisible creatures or, whatever the folklore, the stories are about them. And because of that, these invisible gods that they couldn't see, they had this immense power over everyone, right? People were scared. People were scared of the sun, or people were scared of rain, or people were scared of, if there was an eclipse or something, right? Because they didn't understand it and they didn't know, and they did all of these things as a result. But there was so much power in the invisibility of the belief in these gods and the appeasement of these gods, right? Often not in a very good way, right? It was, a lot of violence or, various things. And and I'm thinking about that. And even if you think about the ancient times and just this power that those gods wielded over everyone. I mean, think about that now though, and how we look at what we've allowed to become our personal God, right? How much power it has over us and how much we let it control us and how much we do all these rituals and all these things that do we really want to be doing them? And does it even make sense, right? I mean, it's two completely majorly different time periods, but it's the same base theory, right? This something has this power over me, and because it has this power, I need to do X, Y, and Z, even if I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm not going to stop and consult with myself about X, Y, and Z because that would just be too much, right? There's a connection there. Do you see that, in your own life, how that might be impacting you? And I say all this, you guys, as I always do. This is not a lecture at you. This is me talking through this because I do this too. I can see myself in this. And each week when I talk to you about this kind of stuff, it helps me sort through it. And my intention with this, or my goal, is that it helps you too, right? It's never for me to be talking at you or telling you that you're wrong or bad, because that's not at all what it is. It's for all of us to sort through this and to bring it to the attention of all of us so that we can all start to act differently, think differently, so that we can create that reality that we want and not just have this default reality because we took an order from someone and we didn't consult with ourselves. And so if we think about 2020, and we've had this year, right, to assess our lives. And I've often thought about the things that I used to do, and one, I wonder why I did them, and two, would I ever go back to them, right? Am I ever actually going to go back to this again? And this false God concept, I was thinking about that further, about this kind of stuff. Like, what am I worshiping as a false God, right? And what am I giving so much power over to, or allowing to have power over me? As we've had this reflection time to think about those things, I think those are really good questions to ask, right? And even thinking about what we continue to dedicate our thoughts to and our actions to, because we believe that we have to do that in order to be happy. I think that's why I did a lot of the things that I did before, because I did those things because I thought that's what I needed to do to be happy. But this time, this space that we've had in 2020, it's allowed me, and I'm sure you, to step back and look at some things and wonder, do I really need those things? And was I even happy, right? What does happy even mean? Because what I thought it meant in March of this year and what I think it means now, totally different places, right? I'm in totally different places. So, and this isn't easy to think about, right? Because we don't want to admit that we have worshipped false gods, right? Nobody wants to admit that. That's not pretty. That makes me, if I think about that, it makes me feel like I've been taken, like I've been oh, somebody fooled me, or somebody, got one over on me, and I don't like that feeling, right? That's a terrible feeling. But if we have to start, if we really start to examine our beliefs, and we think about those things, about what we thought we had to have, and if we can do this without judgment, right? Like me thinking that I've been, taken, or that it's, somebody's got one over on me. I mean, that's me thinking about this with judgment. So I think we have to be able to put that wanting to judge and that desire and that just need to judge something. We have to be able to kind of put that to the side. Like I always say in my mind, like I'm putting it on the shelf for later, which allows my mind to calm down a little bit about it. And it's not like I'm completely disregarding it because I'm giving it a later date to think about. But if we start to think about that, about these things, these false gods that we've been taking orders from, we can start to decide. We can consult with ourselves and decide, do I really need this, or was it just something I was doing out of routine or because I thought I had to have it? Or, maybe your idea of what happy is has changed too. And you get to, adjust that and start to think about that. So for me, this whole order taking and false gods this week, it's been on my mind. It's something that I've really been thinking about. And, each of us are going to be on our own journey with this, or our own thoughts about this. And, it's important, like I always say, take what resonates with you from the show and leave the rest, right? I'm definitely not trying to come across as any sort of false god. In fact, I feel like I sort of do the opposite of what most people do when they have a podcast, right? Like I don't show you a lot about my life. I don't promote things on Instagram or Facebook or anything like, look at me, look at my wonderful life, right? I mean, I do that for a reason, because I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to do that. Like, I don't like that I'm over that. Like, I think most of us are, right? We're like sick of that. Like, most of us know that's fake bullshit anyway. It's just for the camera. But it also leads to making us feel bad and like we're missing out, or like, all these emotions about it that, I'm sick of, and I don't want to make somebody feel that way. So that's why I don't do a lot of those things. And, I think, so then I was kind of like, all right, so where do we go from here? Right? Where do we go? What do we do with that? Like, what do we do with this information this week? And, I think the bottom line is order taking and this feeling this need to have these false gods. It causes us to give away our power, and we need to stop giving away our power in all aspects of our lives. And we need to stop giving away our power within ourselves. We need to come back to ourselves, consult with ourselves more, stop doing things that don't feel good, right? We need to start asking more questions, right? Be more curious about things. Why is this happening this way? Why is this person saying that? And, instead of just nodding our heads and going along with it, we need to be more curious. We need to use our discernment, right? The discernment is like something that I feel like has just completely been out the window this year. Like, we need to start using that more. And we also, I think it's helpful to know or understand or be reminded that it's not required for us to look outside of ourselves for answers. We don't have to do that. And so again, we need to remember our own strength. We need to remember our own power. We need to stop giving away our power and take back our own narrative, right? Take back our narrative. What's right for you? What's right for me, right? Not what somebody else tells me, not what any of that shit, right? Take back your narrative. Consult with yourself, right? Consult with yourself. And now is the time for this, right? We're at this point where now is the time. Like, no one is going to save us but us, right? Like, yes, some things can make things easier for us and some things can assist us in some ways. But bottom line, we are responsible for us. We are responsible for us. And I know this isn't easy either, right? Like I said, even with thinking about this, but actually doing the action of some of these things, it's not easy. But when else are we going to step up and be courageous, right? When else are we going to do this? Look at how this year has went. How has being passive went for you, right? How has just nodding along and going with it been worked for you, right? I mean, now is the time. Now is the time. We can't trust the narrative in any way that we're being told. And like I always say, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. That's our responsibility right now. And I think the only way you can really do that is to rely on you. Rely on you. Rely on yourself. Rely on your intuition, your intelligence. You're smart. You know things. Stop letting people tell you things that you see with your own eyes aren't true, right? We have to stop that. That no longer works, right? We put an end to that. And we rely on ourselves. We rely on what we feel in our heart, what we know resonates with us. And we consult with ourselves, right? We consult with ourselves, and we are the final authority on us. I think that this is a big topic, and in both ways, just even on the order taking piece, but also on the false gods. So I hope this show this week got you thinking about some of those things. I know this is a lot. I know it's overwhelming, but I really hope you believe in yourself enough to say that, or you believe in yourself enough to keep going, right? And not giving up on some of this stuff. And no matter what it is, like, keep going another day, right? We can handle this, right? We can do this, and we will do this, and we will all get through this. Even though it doesn't feel like it right now, we will. And I think we all have to just believe that and trust. And I know it's not easy, but hopefully this week I've given you some things to think about and some questions to pose to yourself or even talk about with your friends. And yeah, I would love to know what you think. So if you have questions about this, if you have feedback, I would love to hear from you. You can email me, sloanfremont@pm.me. I'm also on Parler, Mayway, Telegram. I have links to all that in the show notes. Also, remember my course, 33 Days of Magic. You can take what you learn in the show and apply it further in your own life. So please check that out, 33daysofmagic.com. And remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.